Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Film Nobs. I'm one of your co-hosts, Barry B-Man Benning. Across from me, Steve Benning. To my side, Rick the Morganator Morgan. We are so happy to be here, and we're very happy to have you along for the ride today. So, you know what? Let's just get right to it. I'm going to ask my co-host, Mr. Morganator over there, what do you want to talk about today? And let's see if we can just go with it. Whatever it's your honor today.
It's coming to me. It's coming to me. How about the great James Cameron?
Well, how about him? What about James Cameron? So is James Cameron going to be the topic today?
We will make today James Cameron Day.
Wow, okay. Like in honor of just, there's no special. Is there a special thing going on that I'm not aware? Or are we just going to talk about one of the biggest names in the movie business?
James Cameron holiday coming up,
or? Right?
If not, there should be.
Is it Canada Day? You know, is there a Canada Day?
I think so. Sorry, Canada.
My apologies, Canada. I'm sorry. I don't. I tell you what. I love Canada. You know, I love Canada. You're looking at me. You're making me feel bad. I didn't know there was a Canada.
I love Canadian Dry.
William.
I love Canada. I just don't know Canadian holidays. I'm just not familiar with it.
William Shatner, Jason Alexander,
Neil
actors. Young. There's a lot of great Canadians out there.
A lot of film shoots up in Canada.
How in the world did we get? Oh, okay. All right, Rick, save me from this. Save me from my. I'm desperately trying to hold on here. Just take us away from this. What about James Cameron? What do you want to talk about?
Well, we can talk about his life and talk about his films, since we are called the Film Nobs after all.
We do call ourselves the Film Nobs. I guess it's time to try to live up to that moniker.
So shall we make James Cameron an honorable film knob?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Most certainly he is an honorable film knob.
Okay, so what do we know about James Cameron?
We know, I think, that he has directed the two highest grossing films of all time. Correct?
Correct.
In Avatar and Titanic.
So he's from Ontario, Canada.
And he's from Canada, right?
Yes.
Is he still
a Canadian
citizen?
He is.
So he's not a U.S. citizen?
No, he had applied for citizenship, but then during the presidency of George Bush, he apparently declined his.
What? So wait a minute. He was going to be. He
had applied.
He had applied, but then withdrew that application.
Right.
Because of
the incoming president.
Well, that's. It's funny. I hadn't heard of that before. I had heard. You hear some of those actors. And they get some blowback from it, like Sean Penn, some of his political, those political leanings, and I believe and Alec Baldwin also. Remember when Baldwin didn't he threaten to go to Canada?
Yeah.
So
there were
it was
several.
going to be like a trade. Maybe no, he was going to go to Canada if W was reelected, right? I think that was it. Either elected or I don't know if that was 2000 or 2004, but I know that he threatened to do that and did not follow through with that threat. But they got some blowback from that. I don't ever remember hearing about Cameron's.
I didn't hear anything either, and from the research I did, I didn't come across any. So,
So what made James Cameron James Cameron? What can you tell us about that?
Okay, so his father was an engineer, and so I guess that's right. The technical side of the stuff came in. In high school, Cameron started the science club in high school with a friend of his.
So he's had like this long lifetime fascination with science,
right?
And you can see it throughout his whole movie career,
right? And nature, environmental stuff,
right? I remember him talking. I saw this. I saw a clip from him doing a TED Talk. It was, I think, about 8 or 10 years ago. and he talked about his, again, fascination since he was a child, really, about the natural order of things. Mm-hmm. And when did he? I know specifically, I guess he became interested in underwater, right, and like exploring. Do we know when that started, or?
If I understand from his the video biographies that I watched, they lived really close to Niagara Falls. Okay. So there was a river or a creek that fed into Niagara, and so he would go out on nature trails. And then when he got older, maybe in high school, he got his certified scuba license from, I think, New York. I think he crossed over into the States, and then so he's a certified scuba diver.
So wait a minute. So a Canadian who lived hundreds of miles away from the ocean, where you normally associate those things.
Yeah, I saw that he got that. They traveled back and forth to the YMCA. That's where he got his scuba diving license, and it wasn't until years later that when they moved out to the West Coast that he finally got to dive out in the real waters, of the ocean.
And so that helped. I mean, I guess with a lot of artistic people, your childhood curiosities, lead to bigger and better things. And it certainly did. It sounds like it did here.
Yeah. He was, from what I've read about him, he always had a fascination with like you said earlier, the sciences, and artwork and doing sketches. But it was interesting to find out that there's a period of his life that he just kind of meandered around doing just various jobs. Mm-hmm. Like he still hadn't narrowed down exactly what he wanted to do, even though he had always had these lifelong interests.
He just didn't have a path, I guess. He's looking for his place.
Well, so if that's the case, if he's like looking, there's usually there's that moment in your life, that kind of clicks. So what was the moment? If he's kind of got a little wanderlust in his younger years, is there a particular moment where things change, where he decided, all right, this is the direction I need to go in?
So he had an occupation as a bus driver? No, truck driver, and a bus mechanic, and a machinist. Again, the technical background. He went to college, then dropped out.
Do you know what his major was? Just out of curiosity, was he?
I think it was English.
Yeah, that sounds. I want to say that sounds right. I wasn't 100% sure though. Yeah. Well, so he traded. He decided to drop the lucrative. And look, I can say this, ladies and gentlemen, because I have an English degree too. That lucrative English degree. And so what? So he dropped out of school, becomes this what you said, a litany of like jobs, right? Machinist, bus driver, truck driver. So where's the move? Where did the move towards movies come?
Well, I think just to make money, he started drawing or painting posters for what he called Z-grade movies after college.
Well, doing the Z-grade movies, I mean, there was no shortage of Z. That's the one consistent in film, right? The cinema, especially up to a certain point, you start getting past the 50s, 60s especially, that the Z-grade cinema has kept many a struggling actor, director, production designer, et cetera, busy and at work. And
there's one name there above all.
Roger Corman, right?
Roger Corman.
So how did he get? What was he doing on Roger Corman films?
He was a set designer and a model builder for Battle Beyond the Stars.
Oh man, I don't even know.
I haven't seen that in years.
If I did, that's one of those. Is that the one? I can't remember. That's not the one with Richard Thomas, is it? With John Boyd? See, I think
it is.
If it is, then it's
don't quote me on that.
Then I saw it on Cinemax when I was about 12 or so.
I want to say I was scrolling through on Amazon Prime and saw that listed the other day. I'm going to have to. Yeah,
if you did, then I'm going to go. Yeah, definitely. I would like to see.
Because it's probably been, my goodness.
And you said, well, now, what was he on
years.
that? What was he on that film? What was his job title?
Set painter and model builder.
Set painter and model builder. This guy, yeah. Let me ask you this. Now, I thought I'd read one time. I don't know if I read or saw somebody interviewed or something. Now, he was a truck driver. You said he was a truck driver, right? I don't know if it was during this time. But that had to have been around the time of Star Wars. And I thought I'd read where seeing Star Wars was kind of one of those
one of his
moments,
right.
That
it's one of his influences.
Yeah, like so many of us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we talked about that on our last podcast.
We did indeed. Well, yeah, I'm sure that movie probably set a fire under. And here's what I don't understand about that, though. All right, so I'd heard that, he saw Star Wars. While it inspired him and it influenced him, he also thought that that it kind of hurt science fiction in a way, though. That it was an ambivalent statement. He said that, before that, science fiction had been all about ideas and these big themes in a way. The better science fiction, actually, movies like
2001,
Silent Running. The Day the Earth Stood Still, those type of movies. But that after Star Wars, it became, and this is kind of ironic, it became more all about special effects and eye candy. So it's kind of, I guess, like all people, we all have our contradictions within ourselves. Yeah. I just thought that's a very interesting.
Yeah, that's an interesting point that he makes. But it's kind of one of those, I don't want to say necessary evils, not necessarily the right phrase, but the one thing Star Wars did do was it did push the boundaries of special effects. It made everybody expand what their minds of what they could do,
right.
What it could be
from a technological.
Yeah, from a technological point of view, and it just made you wonder, if that fired something up in Cameron's imagination, like, oh my goodness, they did the models to do this, and they did the models to do that, and all these special effects. If that fired off some part of his brain that said, okay, what else could I do with the influences of trying to put in those social themes and all those things that he was talking about.
He made a pitch to Corman to be a second unit director on, I guess it was Battle of the Stars, or Battle for the Stars. And I think Corman put him up to some kind of test, like, show me what you got. And he made this spaceship, and it really impressed Corman, so he got to be a second unit, director. So I guess that was his first exposure to directing, and then he went on to make a short film for $20,000 after he read Sid Field's screenwriting book. And that short film was 12 minutes, and it's called Xenogenesis.
Now that I've never heard of.
Yeah, I've seen that, and I've read it. I keep saying I'm going to look and try to find that somewhere.
Surely
stuck in the abyss of YouTube.
Yes.
No abyss, pun intended.
Right.
Thank you.
Yes.
So the clip that I saw of Xenogenesis, you could see the beginnings of.
Oh, you saw a clip?
Yeah. You can see beginnings of like the Terminator process of that world. The machines. It has that kind of flair to it.
Did it give a plot? What the plot of it was?
Of Xenogenesis,
Yeah.
I have not seen that.
Okay.
But just from the clip that I saw, it was a short clip.
Where'd you see the clip at?
On YouTube.
It was on YouTube.
Uh-huh.
So where does he go from there? What's his? He's got to graduate, right? He's got to go get his first real movie.
Right.
He's got to put the big pants on.
Exactly. Put your big boy pants on. What is that?
Okay, so from what I can tell, his first movie was Piranha II, The Spawning.
That does seem to be the first, yeah.
And apparently it was shot in Italy.
Yeah.
And he was working on that film as a special effects director. And then one day the director quit. I don't know.
So things were
things were not good.
Things were not good. So he wasn't. So he was his first movie. He wasn't hired on as the director.
No, he was a special effects director.
Right.
And then after the director quit, the producer gave him the script. I guess he was next in command or next in line, whatever.
Right.
And so he's like, "Here, you direct." So he learned on the job, I guess.
You got to wonder if Cameron's response was like, "Awesome, gee, thanks," or is it like, "Gee, thanks"?
Well, I'm going to have to
I'm going to say he was probably pretty excited,
for a while.
Until,
I made it through the first half hour. I've seen the first half hour of that movie, and it's pretty bad. It's pretty unwatchable. I don't think anything that no one was going to do anything with that movie.
But that being said, I mean, whatever experience was, I mean, he just it inspired him to keep making films, to keep directing.
Right. And
so it couldn't have been too terrible.
Well, the experience, from what I gather, was not
not pleasant.
So wonderful.
But it kind of cracked open his creative fire.
And he had a fire of a different nature via a fever. And so
he got fired, right?
No, he had a fever. He got sick.
Yeah.
I was thinking that he got fired off of that too, finally. And they just kept his name on there.
Fired off Piranha 2.
Right. He was fired. Yeah, that they took the producer. I can't remember the producer's name. I'd read that he got rid of him, but they kept his name on there. They kept his name as the director because for some reason, something with the production, they needed an American's name as the director, maybe to keep receiving some kind of money for it. I don't know. It was a strange, odd thing that I read.
It could be the producer's like, this movie's terrible. We need an American name. Hey, this Cameron guy. Yeah, we'll use Cameron.
Sounds very American.
This guy sounds American.
So it was on this shoot. Cameron got sick, and one night he had a nightmare that was, I guess, fever induced.
Yeah.
And he dreamed of the Terminator character. He saw a chrome death-like skeleton emerging from a fire, and he woke up and he drew that or painted it. And that's what became the inspiration.
So the Genesis. Well, so something good did come.
Right.
Thank God. Something good did come out of Piranha 2, The Spawning. So how do you go from Piranha 2, The Spawning, to The Terminator?
That's an excellent question.
That's a big leap.
It is. So apparently the aforementioned dream that he had on Piranha 2, which led to the sketch of the inspiration for the Terminator character,
right,
caused him to write the screenplay for Terminator.
Okay.
But he also wrote the screenplay for Aliens and for Rambo First Blood Part 2.
And what, in the same time period?
Same time period.
Yeah, wow. He's a busy man.
He had the fever.
Come on over there, buddy. I know you want to finish that. I know you want to finish that thought. No, you're shaking it. No, okay. No. All right. So he had the fever.
I'm not going to.
So he had the fever.
Every time I hear that,
I was waiting for it.
I know.
Fever.
I resisted.
So he writes the screenplay. So I guess the Terminator is the one that that's the script that he wanted to do. But I mean, how in the world? After your name is on as a director, Piranha 2, The Spawning. That's not got a lot of weight to it. How do you go? Where do you go find the money for this?
Well, it helps to know people. So apparently he pitched it to several different studios, right, and those studios passed because he wanted to direct, and like you said, he had only directed Piranha 2. So eventually he went to Hemdale.
Yeah.
And met with Gale and Hurd, who was a fellow Corman alumni. So they bought the script for $1 with the condition that he would direct the movie. And he also had people such as Stan Winston help him with the movie that also came from the Corman factory.
So
that kept their production costs low, lowered the budget. So
okay, so he talks Hemdale out of the money to do this project. And, the Terminator is one of the more iconic characters I think now we've gotten in movie history. how did that go up? I mean, how did Arnold become the Terminator? Do we know that?
Originally, Lance Henriksen was supposed to be cast as a Terminator.
Yet one more guy
from Corman.
Piranha II: The Spawning. I believe that's where they where they met. Yeah.
Cameron met with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and Schwarzenegger was supposed to be the character of Reese. But then after they met, Cameron said, "No, you're the Terminator."
Right. So they switched. Well, I guess they didn't switch. They didn't switch roles. Hendrickson, and I can't remember the character's name in the movie. He becomes the cop, right?
Right.
Yeah.
The cop in the movie. So it's a little smaller part, but hey, still
from the Terminator to
the cop that we can't remember his name.
Yeah, was it Detective Hal Volkovich or something like that? Yeah.
That sounds good to me. Now I know Hendrickson's. I know the character from the next movie he did. So things did, eventually work out for Lance and
it worked out good for Lance. Yeah.
And so they brought in, they bring in for Reese, they bring in Michael Biehn.
And of course, Linda Hamilton. Sarah Connor.
Yeah. So wait a minute. So, So two future. I don't know if two future wives for James Cameron on this project. Right. We've got Linda Hamilton and Gale and Hurd. I believe they ended up. I don't know if I think they got married during the. I don't know if it's pre-production for this movie or what. It was somewhere in the ballpark. They ended up hooking up.
Yeah, and talking about the whole Kyle Reese, role. That I read this article where Sting, from the Police, Sting, not the wrestler, but Sting. I had to clarify.
That's the only. Well, for me, that's the only thing I know.
Right. I love wrestling, but this is the musician Sting. He was offered $350,000 to actually play Kyle Reese. It's pretty fascinating.
Well, wait a minute. So did he turn it down? Or?
Yeah. But I don't know exactly what happened with the whole deal. But I'd read the story where he was offered $350,000 to play him.
Do you know if this would have been?
I'm not sure why.
You don't know why he told him no. Now this would have been about the same time Sting did play in another science fiction.
The Bride, yeah.
Well, all right, Dune. He was in Dune.
Dune, yeah, Dune.
And that was
Dune
that was around '84 as well. So
maybe he had just a little bit going on.
Maybe so. Yeah.
But some of the actors also considered for Reese were Matt Dillon, Kurt Russell, Tommy Lee Jones was one of the Mickey Rourke, and here's an interesting one: Bruce Willis.
Was this pre-Moonlight? I can't remember when Moonlighting started. It had to be around.
It was about the same period. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I did not know. Didn't know such a litany of eventually big names were asked to, or were considered. I don't know if they were asked or not.
Yeah, and for most of those actors, it worked out pretty well.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because Cameron does have a habit of keeping the same people.
He does
from film to film to film.
Anything we know about the production of this movie that kind of sticks out, or
just that they kept the cost low?
Now, to keep the cost low, memories. It's been a while since I've seen the Terminator. Now, did they did a lot of stop motion, right? And and that's not something I don't know. Is that? It's certainly a cheaper way to do, special effects, I guess. Was that still kind of a thing back then, or were they actually was this a throwback even then?
Well, probably part of it was budget.
Yeah, but I'm saying in '84 was that had stop motion itself kind of been shuffled to the side as and was it used that much at that time, or was that still? I don't recall.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah,
I can remember wasn't there the Sinbad movie from the '70s? Mm-hmm. Sinbad, the Eye of the Tiger. That's the last movie I remember using it heavy.
Yeah, I always thought that stop motion had a really cool,
like Jason and the Argonauts.
Oh yeah, the Harryhausen stuff.
Yes.
All the way back to who was it? Willis O'Brien, right?
Yeah, Willis O'Brien.
King Kong. Yeah, I've always liked that too. Provided, I mean, there's certain guys that can pull it off, certain guys that in movies that can't.
Well, it's like that movie Basket Case.
Ah, the old Henlotter, right?
Yes, some of those effects in there. When usually it's just this weird, it's just off. It's herky jerky.
Right.
Into where nowadays everything's too fluid. But yeah, I remember when the Terminator was doing that that crawl.
Right.
That crawl. It just kind of had that weird jerky movement. It's unsettling. It's unsettling to me.
I agree. I think in certain, and maybe that's why it is in certain movies. That's it actually plays to your advantage to not have such a lifelike, fluid motion that CGI can get you. Although Cameron certainly decided to go that direction later on to our advantage.
Yeah, he's always been a pioneer.
Yeah, he's definitely been a pioneer. But now for his next movie, he was actually following through on another pioneer's work, right? His next movie was
Aliens.
Taking over for Ridley Scott. So what do we know about that?
Well, Cameron has a fascination with space, just like he does with the sea. So it seemed like a logical place for him to go.
Right.
After Terminator became a huge success, then the studio wanted him to do Aliens. And so they went to Pinewood Studios in England, where they shot Alien, worked with the same crew, but he didn't get the same respect that Ridley Scott had from the crew.
Well, I mean, Cameron was pretty still... he'd made the Terminator, but he's still around 30 years old, pretty young director at the time. So they didn't give him his props.
Right. And apparently Cameron has a real strict regiment for directing, and the crew over there took breaks, I guess, for, was it tea time?
Well, it's England, but yeah, that seems still fairly weird to me. So we actually had tea breaks during I think this movie is somewhere in the $20 million. But the budget on Aliens a little bit higher than the budget for Terminator.
Tea's very important.
$20 million important?
Yes.
So, all right. So, were there any what did they, other than tea breaks?
He tried to show them the Terminator, and either they didn't show up to watch the viewing or they left during the viewing.
So he was going to use that so he didn't bring in Piranha II, the spawning, as the, here, look what I can do.
Right.
Here's Piranha II. Right.
And apparently he had arguments with his DP.
Dick Bush, right?
Right.
Yeah. So what were the problems?
One example, I guess, was the DP wanted to light the aliens brighter, and Cameron wanted to keep them darker.
Well, but the DP, he thinks that, I guess he does he's got his ideas, but I mean, it must have been pretty bad, because my understanding that it led to his firing, right? I mean, he just wasn't gonna.
I guess not. And they had to replace the actor for Hicks.
I'd heard that James Remar, who's a pretty good actor himself, very good character actor. He usually plays the He's played. I guess I always think of 48 Hours when I think of James Remar.
So they brought in Michael Biehn, from Terminator to be Corporal Hicks.
Right. He'd proven his worth. So things turned out pretty good in the end.
Yeah, I would say so.
So what do you do where do you go from there?
You go into the abyss.
So the abyss. So we've gone up into the far reaches of outer space.
Now we're going into the other direction.
We're going to go back down the other direction. Outer space on Earth, basically, in a way. I guess the closest we can.
Yeah, as close as you get to alien world is the underwater exploration of the abyss.
It sounds like he's ready to do a promo for the. You know that.
I know I was working on something. I had something generated.
The sequel to The Abyss. Well,
yeah, I mean,
years later.
Think about it, he had a little cachet because Aliens was an Oscar-nominated film. Right?
No, well, I won visual effects. I guess.
Sigourney was actually nominated for Best Actress.
Yeah, and to me, now that's the one thing. It's funny. The one thing that I think I remember most about Aliens is that's the first time I think I saw that a female could be, an action hero. It'd always been, the guy in the big, the big physical role, of saving everybody. And now and she was extremely convincing. I actually thought she should have won that year, to be honest. I thought that was just
I think it was the first time that I thought, hey, wait a second. The movies I like can get nominated for an Oscar. You know what I mean?
Right. You had a rooting interest for the 3.5 to 4 hour show.
It wasn't the all high artsy fair, the high artsy fair. It was actually, hey, aliens, science fiction, Hicks, Hudson, what? Ripley? Nominated for an Oscar? Okay, I'll watch that.
Well, let me ask you this, again, going off on the side here a little bit. But, Alien, straight up, horror movie, basically a 50s haunted house horror movie, souped up into outer space. I never considered Aliens, the sequel, I never considered that really a horror movie as much as I did an action movie.
No, I've never considered Aliens a horror film. It's always been action suspense.
And that's what Cameron, I think, can do. I mean, he took a very well-loved, project and made it his own. I mean, there's definitely nothing wrong with Alien. He takes that story, expands it, and puts his own stamp on it. And you can also look at it maybe as I think I look at it more of a war movie than I think of it as a horror movie.
Yeah, he's actually said as much, right, in the development of Aliens.
Well, I know that. Yeah, he
right.
Well, he saw it as a bit of an allegory to the Vietnam War, in that here the Marines were they had a much higher technology, I guess. They should be right. You've got all the big guns. You should be able to win the war. Well, if it's a different kind of fight and you don't have the right kind of way, you may have the more sophisticated technology and weaponry, but if you don't have the right technology and weaponry, depending on the fight, then you're in trouble.
Yeah, it's great because that movie just has so many. I mean, so many great scenes, so many quotable lines. A bunch of my friends, I won't go into all the lines, but
he knows them all.
I know them all, but I've got buddies.
Don't you go to sleep to this movie, basically? Or didn't you? There was a time, I thought I remembered, where you said if you were having trouble sleeping, and I still don't understand this, but you would turn on, you would put that into the old VCR. And
that's a true story. When I have trouble sleeping, I can put on Aliens, and I'll be out just about the time they go to the big meet, so when she gets called into the conference room and about there. And if I don't go to sleep there, it's just when they go into space for the first time, when they're shipping out.
You've got the beats down so much that pretty much where you're going to drop
Usually
off.
By those two spots, I'm out. And I wake up, and the movie will be over. And, it's a very comforting movie.
Yeah, I would never think of using it as a lullaby, a sleep aid, right? Well, I don't have my NyQuil here. I think I'll just turn on Aliens. That's awesome. All right, so this like I said, huge hit, right? Huge hit. Now he's definitely got some cachet.
Yeah, he's got cachet.
So we go. We go back down. We come back down to Earth,
right?
But in the most remote place we can think of, just about,
right,
on Earth. What about The Abyss? Do you guys, what stands out about that movie to you?
Well, the underwater Adventures of Jacques Cousteau was an influence for Cameron growing up.
Really? No, I did not know that. I can certainly understand it.
So I guess that kind of fed his imagination. So if you look at The Abyss, and you can kind of see,
that curiosity and that desire to learn something, to go in uncharted territory. All right, so I know most people think about T2 as that, the liquid metal type special effect, right? But it was the effects here first, correct?
Right.
Okay. I'll be honest with you. As far as Cameron movies, for me, The Abyss is the one I probably have the least affinity for. And it may be more, I certainly appreciate what they did. This was a lot of trouble in this movie. They had, I think, the biggest, the biggest filtered freshwater tank in the world built for this thing. I think it was like, you could put 7.5 million gallons of water in this thing.
Wow.
Most of the actors spent, it was like 33 feet down a lot of times. And I can appreciate all the hard work that was put into it, but I can remember the ending just kind of, it was just.
Well, okay, did you see the theatrical release, or did you see the director's cut?
I believe.
Or both.
I believe I saw the extended version, I think.
Yeah, I saw both.
Explain. All right. Well, maybe you're better equipped to answer.
And it's been a while. So, and for those who haven't seen it, because there are a lot of people who haven't seen The Abyss. I remember when I saw it in the theater, and we get to the end of the movie, I was like, "What happened?" It's like the movie just ends, and with I can't remember technically extended cut or director's cut, but when I saw it later on DVD, I was like, "Oh, okay."
No.
Yeah.
Now that you say that, I saw the theatrical version. I do know.
Yeah, it just ends.
Yeah.
It's kind of like it just.
Right.
It's what, that happens, and then the movie ends, and it's like, okay, I still don't exactly get the movie. But with the director's cut, it's one of those times, a lot of times director's cuts just seem like they're just kind of overblown. Like sometimes the theatrical cut is the best cut. It's not as bloated. But The Abyss is one of those movies you needed that extra footage to help explain some of the things that's
what
actually
was
going
on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think by cutting that stuff out, and I'm sure that was a studio decision, I think by cutting that stuff out, it actually hurt the movie. And so people walked out of the theater like, look, I was a Cameron fan. I love Terminator and I love Aliens, obviously. But I walked out of that movie going,
so you did feel the same way, right?
Yeah. I was like, what the heck happened? So, but only when I found out that this was a different version of The Abyss, I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot because I'm a Cameron fan, and the movie made a lot more sense to me. And on my list of Cameron movies, I know that's at the bottom for a lot of people. That's actually, it's not the bottom for me. There's another film that's at the bottom for me with the Cameron films. But
well, Rick, what about you? What version did you?
Must have been the theatrical.
And did you feel the same way that I did? Kind of like. What?
Yeah, just kind of.
Yeah, because it does. It just ends.
Yeah.
And, I guess pretty much everybody may have thought, I know critically that most of the reviews I remember reading were the same way. It's like, well, this is 2/3 of a pretty good movie. And then, last act just kind of, the very end just kind of. And I think that hurt, the word of mouth hurt because this movie, unlike most of Cameron's other movies, did not fare as well. I don't know if it.
No, he said in a TED talk that it actually lost the money. Now, it eventually broke even. But it was a failure.
Now, didn't I hear that the cast boycotted all the PR?
I know that at one time, right, that Ed Harris said that he was going to at one point, and I think eventually he did do some of it, but after that initial, he said he wouldn't talk about it anymore. But a lot of the main cast had some beefs with how Cameron treated them on that film. Harris said he'd never, do anything like that again. He was pretty ticked off.
Yeah, and Cameron has actually talked about his past directorial means and said that he wasn't necessarily the nicest person, talking about himself.
Was that from that same TED Talk? Because I know that I thought that I'd seen something where he said that he actually feels like, and this to me is pretty odd considering what he's done, what he's achieved as a director, but he said that he didn't think that he really knew what it was to be a director, truly be a director, until after he and the company, and I can't remember what it is, but started doing all the underwater stuff. With going down the Titanic and doing all those kind of things.
Well, yeah, because you're forced to be a team.
Right.
I mean, your life is literally in their hands.
And that's where he learned. It's like I think that's where I've learned how to be a.
I've got to trust people.
Right.
Yeah. And he came up. I mean, think about how Cameron came up. So, the whole Piranha 2, the spawning thing didn't go so well. He had to fight for the Terminator. He had to fight for aliens. And so he had a little bit of chip on his shoulder anyway, and then everything that happened with aliens. And
I never thought about it.
And then, what happened, at Pinewood.
I can see that now.
He's got a little chip on his shoulder. So, I mean, I can kind of see where, like, hey, I'm just going to put up my defenses, and here's how we're going to do it. Because obviously he knew he's a talented guy. I mean, people know when they're good. I mean, all the greats know when they're good.
But even he said he didn't feel like he was the best.
Right, right, yeah, but I think that's why great people, people who are like you're talking about your Michael Jordans and your LeBron James, your Tom Brady's, they're never satisfied. I mean, they're always pushing because they're always finding a way to stay motivated. And
they do have to have that belief in themselves. I mean, I think to be truly great at something, you've got to have the belief that you're great. Now, there's different ways that can manifest itself.
Yeah.
But you've got to have confidence for sure.
But sometimes I think that spills over. That push and that drive, it spills over to your team, to your crew,
to a detrimental point.
Right, to a detrimental point. And I think when you're talking about when you went out in the ocean to, did all the exploration, that situation, you're like, okay, I'm however many feet below.
Well, was he not the first? I believe he was the first person to go solo in a sub down to the bottom of the Marianas Trench. I'm pretty sure that's a. I mean,
yeah,
that's a
big
better deal.
You better darn well trust your team. So I'm sure it's going to be interesting to see because it has been so long since he's directed something. What the older version of Cameron. Now I think he directed Avatar after those explorations, but even later, now that he's older, how will that?
Is he going to play nicer with?
Yeah, and will the movies be as good?
Well, hey, does this kind of? Oh boy, we could have a show about this. Remember the Whiplash paradox. In that, did J.K. Simmons' character actually, help him become what he was, or was he just, an a-hole?
Well, I think you and I have talked about
James,
this.
I'm not, insinuating anything.
You and I have talked about this. I've got my own strong opinions about that, but that's a show. That's a show sometime that we can get into.
Definitely. So, all right. So, from the abyss, we go to
T2, Terminator 2, Judgment Day.
Here, we're back to big box office now. Right. I can remember. So what are you, Rick? What's your, when you think of T2? What do you think of?
The building exploding. There's the lab.
Yeah.
Apparently, there was a building set for demolition.
Yeah.
And Cameron got permission to film in that building and then be on location when they demoed the building and then use that footage, for the movie. So it was a huge, massive fireball, and the whole movie's cool.
Yeah, I know. I think about that. I think about the scene down in the reservoir, the little what do you call them? little man-made concrete lakes that pepper through L.A.
Yeah, the motorcycle. Talking about the motorcycle.
Oh, yeah.
The truck.
Yeah. Yeah, that was. I remember watching that movie and going, this is a step forward, definitely.
Yeah, some great stuff.
So I wonder how much Cameron, being a former truck driver, plays into that imagery.
That's a good point.
Well, he might have been able to get some aggression out. Maybe he hated the job. So he was able to just blow.
We're gonna crash this truck.
Exactly. I'm gonna get my revenge.
So I remember in the first Terminator, there was a shot of like a toy truck. I think it was blue, and I think it's the same, similar truck that they used in T2 in that very scene that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And now, since learning that he was a truck driver, it's like, I see, inspiration's coming up. And
oh yeah, that movie is full of great set pieces. When they're going into like the ward, and trying to get Linda Hamilton back, and she first sees the Terminator, and it's kind of shot at that that high frame rate, and he's closing in. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's just so ominous, so great.
And then cast, we think about the Terminator, but really, Arnold as the Terminator. But very important for the success of this movie was casting Robert Patrick as the T-1000.
Yeah. Right.
And I read where, it was the mindset of, all right, well, we had, Schwarzenegger was the Panzer, right? So he needed a Porsche to kind of offset, Yeah,
you have to go up. If you're going to be the Terminator, you have to have an opponent that's really going to be more than equal to what you are.
Right.
And yeah, I think the more thing is absolutely right. Sometimes I think a lot of the mistake made in some movies, let's equal, Yeah, you really need it more.
Because that gives you the advantage in storytelling to look for that thing that's going to get you over the edge. Because the whole movie, you can't get over the edge to defeat it. You get close, but you just can't. And you're waiting for that one thing, and you build that movie and that story up to that point.
And paralleling, the Terminator compared to humanity was supposed to be obsolete. And then, in T2, Arnold's Terminator model was obsolete compared to the T-1000. And so you just, like you said, you're raising the stakes of...
Right. And that's, as we all know, that's a big thing. And the old screenwriter, you gotta raise those stakes.
Yeah, it's great too that they actually made the Terminator, the T-800, more human. Like joking around with Edward Furlong, and I thought that was pretty cool. He tells jokes, all these things he talks about, all these. It'd be great.
Yeah, we've made Schwarzenegger's Terminator now, which was the villain, the original. Now he's the good guy. It's kind of like Godzilla. Remember, Godzilla was the villain.
Yeah, you flip it. You just kind of flip the narrative. And I remember hearing about that for the first time. I was like, wait a second. The Terminator is going to be a good guy.
That's a brilliant plot device.
Yeah. It is. So what's going to be the bad guy?
So, all right. So now the Abyss, like I said, at that time, I guess, lost a little money. I'm not sure if it was a huge loser at the time, but it lost a little money, right?
Yeah, he wasn't happy with it.
However, despite that, T2 at that time was the most expensive movie ever made at around $100 million. Now, granted, with inflation, cost inflation, Cleopatra would have still been the most expensive movie ever made if you factored in inflation. But this was a big movie.
Yeah, it's a monster size budget. I mean, nowadays, you see a toilet paper ad that's $100 million.
Right. But yeah, back then, when that 3-digit number come back, $100 million, I can remember going, whoa, that's huge. But it paid off. Actually, that was the highest grossing movie of 1991. And I believe it's still Schwarzenegger's highest grossing movie. Is that right? Is that correct?
If I remember correctly, don't quote me on that one.
I think it is. And it won. Now, it did win 4 Oscars, I believe. It won for effects, visual effects, both the sound awards, and for best makeup. So this was a very, very successful movie.
And will forever be in my heart as known as the Back of the Truck movie. So,
Back of the Truck movie. Well, all right. So
it's because I actually had to hide on our way. We were staying at the lake. It came out, I believe it was on 4th of July weekend. But we actually were camping at the lake. We found out that it was at a local theater, just, about 5 miles down the road. And so we all piled in, but it was in a truck. And so we had to hide, before we all getting trucked. And so we all kind of lowered down and...
So this is a drive-in.
Yeah. We all wanted to ride together for whatever reason, even though we all had separate cars. But you know how it is. Yeah. So we all just kind of ducked down on the bed of the truck and rode up to the theater.
And that, so, you always see that not working in the movies, but it worked.
Yeah.
It worked here.
Yeah, it's our Back of the Truck movie.
Back of the Truck movie. Well, now I'm going to remember it as your Back of the Truck movie. All right, so from there we move on to, and a movie, I don't know if it gets as much love as it did at the time, but I really enjoyed True Lies. I'm going to tell you, to me, that was a fun movie.
That was fun. More Bill Paxton.
Yes. You can't go wrong with more Bill Paxton. Yeah, his character in the beginning of that movie, you gotta, oh my gosh, you gotta love that guy.
Yeah. Once again, a lot of quotable lines.
All right, let's.
Which I'm not going to quote those. I'm not going to quote.
You're not going to quote those, huh?
No.
And well, look, this movie's so good. That Tom Arnold actually comes across. This is easily the best thing Tom Arnold ever did.
Yeah, True Lies is kind of that forgotten Cameron movie.
It is. Mm-hmm. It is kind of. And well, it's another huge. I can't remember the budget on that movie.
And why didn't they ever make a sequel to that? I mean, that seems like a movie that just begged for a sequel.
Right. That character, a spy, here we got a new spy, an American James Bond type. Yeah, that's a good. Heck on it. Do you have any idea?
No.
Is this a setup, or you look at me going, oh?
No, it's one of those things just sitting here talking about. It's like, why didn't they ever make a sequel to that? I mean, come on, that great scene to where, Arnold's in the corner, he's got the tape recorder, and Jamie Lee Curtis,
Jamie Lee Curtis. Sorry, honey.
It was just a great scene. It was just a great scene because it just had those weird parallels, like, she doesn't know who's in the corner, right, but yet she's doing it for her family. But yet it's her husband the whole time. It's just it's a fantastic setup.
And she's awkward.
It's right. Yeah, she has no. But yeah, she's trying. Yeah, she's trying to do her best.
It's great. It's a great scene.
That's probably the best scene in the movie.
It's hilarious.
Yeah. Well, okay. I think I've got an answer. Maybe now that I think about why they didn't do a sequel, because I think that he probably had Titanic in mind at that time. And that was going to be, I loved, and this may again be back to, I don't know if this was the TED Talk, but another thing that I saw where he said he basically did Titanic. So, he had a burgeoning, since the abyss, a burgeoning desire to go underwater and explore these things. And he kind of used that script and everything to convince a studio to give him the money.
Right.
To go do the thing, not necessarily the movie as much as the exploration of the Titanic.
So it took 2 studios to fund Titanic.
So it wasn't just one. It was
20th Century Fox and Paramount.
Hey, it's even better. You get to trick 2 movie studios into funding your personal project.
And if I recall, it was the largest budget of any movie ever.
Well, yeah, because all right, what is Titanic? 5 or 6 years past? And we already mentioned that T2 was, at that time, the most expensive movie ever made at $100 million.
Mm-hmm.
6 years later, it was a 97 movie, right? I think. So 6 years later, you get a $200 or more $1 million movie in Titanic. I'm pretty sure.
So how much pressure do you think the studios were feeling at that point? Like, hey, we just keep sinking, no pun intended, we keep putting more and more money into this film.
If I recall from one interview that Cameron did, didn't he forego getting paid?
I don't know about that. Boy, yeah, I don't know if I've heard that.
Yeah, because everything. I mean, think about that. As a studio, you're sitting there, you're just pouring so much into this, and it's a 3-hour
love story, basically
epic about the Titanic, and you know
what's going
to happen. You know how it's going to end.
And so, right? All right. So a lot of pressure, right, on these execs. And here comes your first weekend grosses coming in. About $25 million. Uh-oh. I would have to say, I'd be a little worried.
Oh, I mean, look.
I'd be a little worried.
Nowadays, you get a movie that's $120 million film, and it brings in $20 million, $25 million. Oh, people are sweating. I mean, they're like, oh, well, somebody's going to get fired over this one.
Yeah, and that $200 million, that's 1997 money.
Yeah.
$25 million, they would have to be worried about that. But guess what? Lo and behold, here comes second week. It didn't drop. It raised up to around 35 million, somewhere in that ballpark. And you know what? It just kept going. That's what it kept doing week after week. Between $20 and $30 million, it seemed like forever. I can't remember how many weeks this thing was number one. Wasn't it number one for about 3 months?
A long time.
Yeah.
I mean, this movie, when you talk about a movie that has legs, this is the movie of a movie that has legs. The example of a movie that has legs.
If I recall, they tapped into a certain demographic that kept going back and going back and going back.
Well, yeah, and if you think about it too, they had. This is a 3-hour. Stephen Major. This is a 3-hour movie. You're getting less screenings per day, but yet you're still making that kind of money. It's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing to think about.
I mean, and wouldn't it be if you're a studio back in the day? And you look at the numbers for Titanic, you're going, okay, well, we came at 26 and we got 30-something, but then you keep watching those numbers roll in and your gross keeps going up. Don't you think somewhere along the way that some more people would say, hey, you know what? Female demographic. That may be a big thing. Maybe we need to make more movies.
Right.
That capitalize on half the population.
Yeah, because, Titanic kind of came out okay with that. And also with Titanic, it shows you the power of a good soundtrack, like a song that just keeps driving people back to the theater. Because think about it. All right, you're on a date somewhere, and they're like, the song comes on. My Heart Will Go On. This epic Celine Dion song. And you're on a date, and she looks over at you, and she says, let's go see Titanic. I love you. Let's go see Titanic. And he's like, we've seen it 3 times already. But she says,
it's only 3 hours,
it's only 3 hours, and we get to spend it with each other and be romantic. That happened over and over because the movie made closing in on $3 billion.
You mentioned that song, and I'm gonna use one of your favorite lines, and I won't use the school in which you refer to in this, but I hate that song with the fire of 1,000 suns. I heard that song was just play. I think there were some radio stations that just played on a loop for 24 hours a day,
like Christmas music.
Oh my Lord, man, oh day. Anyway, sorry, Celine. I just had to publicly admit that I truly can't stand that song.
For the record, I am somebody who is a genuine horror movie fan, all that kind of stuff. But I love me some Celine Dion music. I said it. Yep, I said it.
You heard it here first.
And maybe last. All right, so
where do we go from Titanic?
Well, you turn into Stanley Kubrick, I guess, who, by the way, one of his early inspiration, I believe that I've read that 2 of his 5 favorite movies are Dr. Strangelove and 2001: A Space Odyssey. So you're so successful, you turn into Kubrick and you wait how many years before your next release? Because as Kubrick went along, we got further and further apart between release dates for his films. And Avatar,
it's 2009,
came out 12 years later. 12 years before he... Well, actually, that's not technically true. For narrative features, because he did direct a couple, right? A couple of IMAX movies.
Right, documentary films.
Right, about...
ocean life.
About...
Deep sea exploration.
Right, which became his passion. And that became kind of his job, I guess, right? I mean...
Right.
He started really becoming involved with developing. I believe his companies were developing new technologies for.
Oh yeah.
They were also developing technology for Avatar.
For Avatar, yeah.
That's part of what took so long. They had to develop the technology for Avatar.
They built a new camera system. Was it the Fusion?
Right. It was. Yeah. I think that's the name of it.
And he geeked out on a interview video with was it National Geographic, I think. So I can't get into the details of it because it kind of went over my head. But it was pretty major in undertaking to get that technology right. And so before I think he left on one of his expeditions, he said, work on this while I'm gone. And he came back and they're like, it's not ready yet. So he went on another expedition.
Well, yeah, I guess, his heart wasn't quite. And he's been a perfectionist with his movies. He wants to make sure the technology is ready for what he, has in his mind to do. And it, as we all know now, Avatar was, at the very least, I don't think it's quite as successful as some of his other movies story-wise. But, man, that movie is something to look at.
Well, see, sure. he needed something that was going to push his... See, he said it before. He's an adventurer. He's an explorer. I mean, you look at the things. He wasn't sitting around, for 12 years, running around in his bathroom eating Cheetos. He was out there on the ocean doing these deep sea dives. I saw where he talked about, where he was able to go into like his submersible and when they're like looking through the Titanic. It felt like he'd been there before,
right?
Because he'd been on the set of Titanic. I mean, he was...
Yeah, he knew what was coming around the corner because he'd built those sets.
Yeah, he was living this amazing life away from the film set. So what's going to drag you back to making films is like the exploration of doing something different that may fail. That's Cameron's tendencies. Is always live on the edge. You may fail doing something.
And he's also been working with NASA developing technology for space exploration. And he has said that he would love to go to Mars. So it's all about the exploration.
Yeah, always pushing the boundaries. What's that great quote that was from the TED Talk? Do you remember? It was he said, I want to get this exactly right. He says that failure is an option,
right,
but fear is not.
Right. That's a great quote.
That is a great quote. I need to put that on a shirt somewhere.
And he has definitely shown no fear over the years. Well, I fear that our time may be drawing close, guys. Maybe about time to wrap this one up. What is our overall take on James Cameron? What has he meant to you as far as your film going, Rick?
To me, he's a mentor and a kindred spirit. I think we share similar passions and drives, certainly as a filmmaker. And I look forward to continuing my exploration into the filmmaking industry, including special effects and directing, and keep pushing ideas forward.
Damn it, man! I'm not going to be able to top that.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's pretty well put.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? Unless you can top that, you got anything?
Well, I mean, he's just made some of the great movies of our youth, of my youth. It's unforgettable. The Terminator and Terminator 2 and some of these other ones that like I can go to sleep to. Aliens, right? My comfort movie.
Your health may actually, your health and well-being may be owed somewhat to James Cameron.
He's improved my health overall being.
And didn't Aliens make it onto your desert island movie list?
Yeah, Aliens from my desert movies. But I will say this: there is something I do find fascinating. I think everyone, no matter if you're a filmmaker or whatever you want to do in life, is he does have some rules for success. I won't go through all of them. He has 10, but I'll go through a few. And one of them, I think, is kind of fascinating. He says, "Don't bet against yourself." Right? Don't bet against yourself because there's plenty of other people that's going to do that anyway. I mean, what a great mindset to have, no matter what you're going to do. And I think we can all take a lesson from Cameron to have that kind of mindset. Look, I don't care if you want to be a professional athlete. I don't care if you want to be a truck driver, whatever it is. Just make sure that you do the best of what you're willing to do and put everything you can into it. Don't be afraid to dream. All these things that he is willing to do to be an adventurer, be an explorer, and just go for it. And I think that's a great lesson that we can take away from James Cameron.
Absolutely. All right, guys. I can't top either of those things. I think they're very well put from the heart. And so we thank you again so much for being with us. Please listen up the next time. We'll be coming back at you before too long with who knows. Well, I don't know what we're going to talk about next time, but we'll try to make it interesting.
Tell us what your favorite James Cameron movies are. Hit us up on Twitter at Film Nobs. Look for us on Facebook and check out our YouTube channel.
Take care, everybody.